Fossilize, Chapter 3, Crushed. Anthony looked down at the plate in front of him. Amidst the mac and cheese sat small diced peppers and mushrooms. He poked at a mushroom with his fork and tried to smile. His head was pounding. She sat across from him, looking like a goddess. She ignored his smile and continued to chew on her food. Anthony once again looked at his plate. Did this have to happen today? This was the first peaceful day they'd had in weeks. The first day that it actually felt like it used to, back when they couldn't get enough of each other. He coughed, and without looking, knew she was smiling. Heat filled his cheeks. This wasn't the first time he'd wondered if she meant to do this. "Pebs," he whispered. "Is something the matter, Aunt?" Her voice flooded his body with joy, and he hesitated. Did he have to bring it up? He could let it go, and make himself a sandwich later. He knew that if he said anything, the night would be ruined. She would change from the joyful woman he'd come to love, to the monstrous terror that made him wish he'd never been out walking on that night so long ago. The heat in his cheeks began to invade his forehead. "Well, I've mentioned before that I'm allergic to peppers and mushrooms. I can't eat this." She looked at his plate, a slight smirk on her lips. "Oh, Aunt, I am sorry. I don't know what came over me." She paused. "Can you pick them out? Just eat the macaroni?" Anthony stared at her. The smirk on her thin lips widened slightly, and she used her long, thin fingers to push a loose lock of hair behind her ear. She was wearing it in a bun today, showcasing her slender neck to the world. The heat flooding his face turned into a pressure, pushing as if trying to escape his body. He wanted to believe that she cared about him like he cared for her, but there was something in that smirk. The smirk held the weight of 1,000 accusations. Anthony could hear them all as the silence settled in. "Why don't you wear jeans? Do you have to do that in public? Stop swaying. You look like an idiot. Are you really allergic? That sounds made up. Could you please just do what I want for once? She obviously likes you. Why are you so upset? He's just a friend. He's just a friend." He sighed heavily. "I'll just get a sandwich. I'm sure it tasted great though." He stood, carried his plate to the garbage, and began scraping the food into the bin. He didn't need to look to know that her gaze was following him the whole way. Her gaze, and that self-righteous smirk. The weight was still there, but he fought through the crushing pain because he always got excited when she was around. He fought through the pain because he loved her. He could hear the smirk on her face as she leaned back. "Anthony Keel, I'm going to spend the rest of my life bringing you back to reality." Anthony tried to ignore the implications as he reached up to grab the peanut butter from the cabinet. The pounding, heat, and pressure became too much to bear, and he stumbled. His face hit the tiles of the kitchen floor, and his entire body ached. The muscles in his arms and legs screamed. A burning pain singed his wrists and ankles. The entire world shifted, and gravity flipped. Colors smeared. Anthony looked at Andrea. His heart broke when he saw her beautiful face had been replaced by the lifeless stare of the recently dead. Darkness seeped over his vision, and his lungs screamed for air. With an excruciating yell, Anthony pulled air into his lungs. His entire body was riddled with pain as he fought to move. Every shift sent pain shooting up his arms and legs. His eyes opened to see dirt far below him. His arms and legs attached by a chain that had caught itself on the branches of a tree. He was hanging upside down with his arms forced behind him. Anthony screamed again. He watched as his blood dripped from his mouth and down to the ground below. His screams echoed into the forest and vanished. He tried to move again, only to be assaulted by pain. Something wasn't right. One of his limbs was like his mind, dislocated and broken. He screamed into the open air again. Tears, blood, and saliva sprayed from his face as he roared until no sound came. Finally, when there was nothing left to scream about, his body went limp and sleep came. He woke up to the chirping of birds. The sun was low in the sky, giving the forest an orange glow. The pain in his arms and legs had long since faded. The pain had been replaced by a numbness that scared Anthony more. The circulation was likely to be cut off. If he didn't figure out what to do next, he was going to lose limbs. His eyes fell to the ground below and his breath caught in his throat. There, clear as day, stood Andrea. She was looking up at him with a slight smile on her face. He opened his mouth to call out, but no sound came. She stood there, looking up at him in her summer dress. Her long hair waved in the breeze, and he watched her bare toes curl around the grass at her feet. She looked happy. For a moment he forgot where he was, and just wanted to be down there with her. The bird chirped again, and the image of her vanished. To his surprise, Anthony began to feel a pain in his finger. He'd thought it too numb to feel pain. He gave a finger wiggle, and felt something tug at his finger. The bird chirped again, and once again there was pain, this time at his wrist. He could feel the warm trickle of blood that ran down his arm. Something was biting him. Because of his position, all Anthony could do was wiggle. He began to shake his body, hoping to scare away whatever was nibbling on his fingers. Instead, Anthony felt the creature's claws dig into his back, and the bites began on his elbow. Anthony's voice was long gone, so all he could do was shake and jostle the thing, gripped into his back. The chirping came again. Now that Anthony heard it better, he realized that it was too low-pitched for a bird call. It was something else. It was a dinosaur and it was trying to eat him. Anthony began shaking harder, and using his elbows to knock into the dinosaur every time it came for a bite. With a loud crack, the branch holding him up broke. Whatever had its claws in Anthony's back let go as the world began to spin end over end. Anthony felt his heart up in his throat, and he dropped like a rock. Branches slapped his face as he tumbled through the air. Unable to get out of the way, Anthony felt his body smack into a larger branch and bounce off. His body, already torn apart by searing pain, barely felt anything as it spun through the air. His cheek was torn to shreds as his face slammed into a tree trunk. He felt like a ball in a pachinko machine as he ricocheted from branch to branch, tree to tree. He barely felt when his body slammed into the dirt at the base of the tree. The world around him faded. Once again, this time laying at the bottom of the tree, Anthony slipped into unconsciousness. "You never were good enough." Her voice broke through the fog of sleep. It was her. It was Andrea. "He makes me feel loved." Andrea's cries felt distant. "You were nothing but a stepping stone." He blinked against the pain and disorientation. He could make out her face, only a few inches away from his. "Baby, I'm sorry I couldn't be enough for you," he tried to say, but it came out as a bunch of groans and grunts. "You can be sorry some other time. Right now, I just need you to leave." Then she screamed. It was loud, panicked, and blood-curdling. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," he cried over and over again. He watched as she stepped back. His vision cleared some more. "I'm gonna need you to get up." She was leaning against a tree, as though she couldn't stand by herself. Her voice was deeper, gruff, and full of authority. "Listen to me, prisoner. I can't make it back to my squad without some help." It wasn't her. Anthony could see plain as day that it was one of the soldiers from the chopper. The The soldier had wavy blonde hair that was dirty with blood and mud. If the soldier had been standing straight, he would have been 6 feet tall. Who? What? Anthony shook his head, still escaping the visions of her. Private Kyle. You can just call me Kyle. Anthony tried to stand, but was grounded by the sharp pain in his chest. He groaned. I can't stand. Yeah, you broke a few ribs. Lucky it wasn't worse. Private Kyle's voice was strained. His breathing was heavy. Anthony rubbed his wrists. The soldier must have removed his chains. Every movement hurt. He rolled onto his back and felt a burning sensation that caused him to scream out. Fighting against the pain in his chest, he forced himself to sit. He fumbled with his fingers until they ran into the sticky warmth of his blood. He winced and pulled his hand back. That was a nasty cut. I did what I could, considering. That was when Anthony noticed the soldier's leg. It was being held straight with several sticks tied together. The soldier had used a strip of cloth that Anthony recognized as coming from his prison uniform. There was blood trickling down and dripping into the dirt. Just by looking, Anthony could tell that the break was terrible. In fact, it was easy to see that the splint was inadequate as well. So, I'm gonna need you to get up. The soldier coughed into his hand. I can't walk by myself, and I need to get back to my squad. Anthony fought to his feet, stumbling against the tree before finding his footing. I could just walk away, leave you here like you were about to do to me. The soldier frowned. I wasn't the guy that murdered his ex. But yeah, go ahead, walk away. Thanks for the first aid. Anthony turned to walk away. Not that way, the soldier called after him. I saw something big lumbering around and it didn't look friendly. Anthony sighed and moved to go a different direction. Fine. That's a bad idea too. The soldier winced in pain. Have you ever heard of a Troodon? No. Anthony paused. What are they? Small dino. About 2 meters long and crazy smart. I watched them drag my friend away in that direction. There was about 10 or 12 of them. So which way then? Anthony turned and glared at the soldier. Well, I haven't checked that way. The soldier grinned. And wouldn't you know, that's the direction I'm heading. Anthony was not amused, but walked over to help the soldier to his feet.